The fundamental building block of any Angular application is a component. For example, if I go back to my code under SRC, we have app, and under app, you can see that there are 4 files called app component CSS, app component HTML, app component spec, and app component TS file here. So these 4 files together make up a component, but essentially the class that we have created here called app component is the actual component. A class with a decorator of @component becomes a component. A component must have something like a selector. When you're working with routing, you will see that this becomes optional, but at this time this is mandatory for us. You can simply give a name like app-root, or you can use some other selectors like hash, which represents an ID, or you can use a dot, which corresponds to a CSS class name. You can use parent-child relationships and so on and so forth. But what I would do is I would like to simply keep this back to app root, as well as in the index HTML, I would like to enable the tag app root instead of the other two that we had earlier. So in the index HTML, when app root element is found, the content of that is going to be substituted with this HTML, which is denoted here with template URL. But alternately, you can also use an inline template. For example, I can remove this and then put something else here, which is actual HTML content. Say, for example, I can say h1, I'll say hello Angular / h1. Now you should see that instead of hello world, I should see a hello Angular, because now the actual template text itself is going to come over here. Most of the time we don't use this because eventually this is going to be a lots of HTML code which is very difficult to write in single quotes or even in the template strings itself. So we're going to put a template URL and then associate the URL, which is current folder / app.component.html. If you want to create our own component, we also have to create these 4 files generally, but instead of we creating them manually, our ng tool provides a command for generating all these components. So let's go to the command prompt, and if you want, you can stop this server running, or you can open a new tab or new command prompt window, and then you can issue the commands from your project folder. So what I'll do is I'll keep this running as it is, and then I'll go to shell a new tab. So when the new tab is open, I'm currently on my work directory. As you can see, it is in the movie browser directory. Make sure that you're always in the work directory, and then you type ng generate, or you can simply type G and then followed by component, or you can say C. So literally you can say ng generate component like this, or you can say ng-gc, and then type the name of the component that you are interested in creating. Now it's a general practice that you organize your components in a separate folder compared to other things like services or directives, which then go into different folders. So I'm going to go create a folder called components / and the name of the component that we are interested to create. Now I want to create a home page component, so I'm simply going to say home. So there is a new folder called components under app, and inside that there'll be a folder called home, and inside that there'll be 4 files generated called home.component.ts, home.component.spec.ts, and there is an HTML and a CSS file associated with the same thing. So when I press enter, that's what you're going to see. In addition, it also is going to update a file called app-module.ts. Now this is very much essential. Let's go and have a look into the change that has done in the app.module.ts first. So let's go back to our code, and if you want to open a file in VS Code, you can type Control P on Windows, Command P on Mac OS. So that will give you a dialog box where you can search for files. You can simply type app module. You can see that I'm typing partial letters, and wherever it is matched, it is getting me that. App module TS is what I'm interested in. If I press enter, you can see that app module has been opened. As well, in the module ng module decorator, we have a section called declarations, and in this section we will see our home component that has been created. A home component comes from slash components slash home component dot ts, and that is included in the declaration section. What we are doing basically here is to say that this component is part of this module. So it's a logical grouping of all the components that are required. In case if it is not part of this, then your app component cannot make use of home component. So now that it is part, let's get rid of that from here, and let's go and see what is there in app components, and then there is a home as a subfolder. Under that we have this home component ts. As you can see, it is an empty class here. There's nothing here. Simply says selector is app-home. Now one thing that you can also see is that the default prefix for your selector has come with app. However, in the angular.json, we can configure that as well. So if you go to the angular.json, you should be able to see somewhere that the prefix happens to be app, because of which you got app-root. Or if you go to the home component now, you should see that there is an app-home. Alternately, when we issued this command here, we could have given a different prefix also by using -- prefix equals to something else. For example, for my application being a movie browser, I may use MB as a prefix. However, we will keep the prefix as app itself. But Angular style guide suggests that you should use some kind of prefix to differentiate between your tags as well as HTML tags. The content of app-home is going to be replaced with home.component.html, which simply says here home works. But on my browser, I don't see that. And that's because we have never used this particular element or tag. Now we can't use this in the index.html, because if I have to use that in the index.html, then in the app module TS, we have to say bootstrap the home component instead of app component. Now an Angular application typically is a tree of components, which means there is going to be one root element like app root, and that contains a couple of others, like for example a header, a sidebar, a footer, a home component, and the home component may contain subcomponents and so on and so forth. So to understand the same, let's go back to our app component HTML, and right below this I'm going to type here app home like a tag. And now when I go back here, you should see that the app home will now be replaced with its corresponding HTML. So this is how we can say app root contains app home. Now app home can further contain other components. As we go forward, we will be creating more components, and we'll basically create a tree of components over here. In order to make our application look better and beautiful, let's use a CSS framework called Bootstrap. Now the Bootstrap's official homepage is called getbootstrap.com, where you should be able to read a lot of documentations and help and so on and so forth. If you want, you can download this onto your local machine using either a zip file, or you can refer to them directly using something called CDN. There are quite a few options for you to work with, like using npm, you can do an npm install. If you're using yarn, you have yarn add bootstrap. But if you want a nicer bootstrap theme, then we visit a website called bootswatch.com. What you see here, it's nothing but a free themes for Bootstrap, and the version 4 is going to be used over here. And if you scroll down, you should see a lot of nice theme options. We can choose whatever that looks nice for us. So you want a lighter one, a darker one, and so on and so forth. For example, let's say I want to use this one. You can click on the download button to download the essential files, or you can click on the drop down over here to see what file you want. If you're using SCSS file, probably you can use this bootswatch.scss, but I'm using a CSS. Now I'm not interested in debugging this CSS, so I don't need this bootstrap.css, but I can be happy with bootstrap.min.css. I'm going to right click this link here and then say copy link address. That's going to be the actual location of this file. Now I come back to my application. Now there are a couple of ways I can include this into my application. Number one, if I have downloaded that, typically we would keep them in the assets folder. And then in the angular.json, if you go and happen to look at here, there's a set of assets that you can mention. styles you can mention over here. I can probably give a path from my project folder or relative to angular.json, the location of the CSS file. Since I'm copying a URL, I will not be able to copy and paste the URL over here because this is supposed to be a physical file relative to your project. Likewise, you can copy some scripts if you want, but I'm only interested in the CSS. And as you can see that there is already a styles.css under src that is being used. So which is right should be here. And I can now include here by using @import a URL of and then paste that URL and make sure that put a semicolon over here. And now I have access to the CSS from Bootstrap. So if I go back to my app component HTML and make something like h1 class equals to alert-info. And if I come back to the browser and happen to look at this movie browser, you can see now the background, foreground colors of all our elements have changed. That's because of the Bootstrap that we added just now. Let's go back here to make some necessary changes. Let's get rid of this and add here one container as a class name from Bootstrap. And let's include this app home inside the same thing. So whatever the app home content is there now, it's going to be indented inside. You can see that there's a gap here on the left side. There'll be a gap on the right side. If you want to check, you can just click on this arrow here in the developer tool and then move the mouse. You can see that there's a margin on the right and left because of container. Now let's go and add some useful stuff on the home component. For example, I want to display a picture of mine displaying that this app is developed by me, my contact details, and so on and so forth. So let's go back over here. I'm also going to create a new folder under assets for images. So let's create an images folder where all our static images are going to be kept over here. And now I'm going to copy an image from one of my pictures. So I'll go to my picture here. So there is a picture, vinod6.jpg. Let me make use of this. I copy this and then come back over here, images. I right click and say probably paste. I don't see a paste, it's disabled. So what I can do is I can say here reveal in Finder or reveal in Explorer in Windows. When I click on this, it opens. I'm going to paste that picture. And the picture is now inside this particular file. So the picture is there right here. So I want to make use of this in my home component. Let's go to the home component HTML and make some changes over here. First, let's get rid of whatever is there inside this. And I want to have some image. So I can say here img src equals to /assets /images /vinod6.jpg. That's the name of the file. And alt should be an alternate text. I'm going to type here my name, Vinod Kumar Kayartaya. If you want, you can give some additional class names. For example, Bootstrap provides a class called img thumbnail. So I can say class equals to img thumbnail. So it's going to give you a small white border. Let's give some horizontal rule. We'll also provide something like an application, which is a demo application. So I can say here Angular PWA demo application. I can provide something like developed by. I can give my name, Vinod Kumar Kayartaya. If I want this to be surrounded with a hyperlink, I can give here the anchor tag, which says https vinod.co. That's what probably I might want to give. I can also give a link to see my profile. Let's say that, and then I paste my name over there. Let me also give some basic copyright symbol. So ampersand copy semicolon, that's going to give you a copyright symbol. Let's say I want to give an year, let's say 2019-20, and then I say all rights reserved by probably another hyperlink to go to my website, and then that should contain something like my company name. So now that we have this very basic home component, let's see how it's going to look like. And it's very, very big, as you can see. But I want this to be a smaller and center aligned and so on and so forth. But if you want that, well, one way to do is we can create basically 3 columns and keep this in the center column. Now let's go and do the same thing. I'm going to cut everything from here right now, and I type here dot row, which is going to create a logical row of elements that can contain 3 columns. And if you wanted that columns to be of equal size, you can simply say dot col, but I want this to be more responsive, meaning on a mobile device, I want this column size to be a little bit different than the column size for a laptop screen. So Bootstrap provides us 4 types of devices. Extra small corresponds to mobile devices like mobile phones. You also have SM for small devices, which is like tablets, for example, or an iPad. Then you have MD for your laptop screens. If you have a very high resolution, big screens or projectors, you also have something called LG. So what I want to say is that I want for a medium device, like for example, laptop screens, I want this to have 4 out of 12 grids. So Bootstrap has a concept of grids here. One row consists of 12 grids. And I say that this column occupies 4 grids. So you can think of that your screen is divided into column 1 of 4 grids, column 2 of 4 grids, column 3 of 4 grids. So maximum of 12 grids are allowed per row. So I will say here into 3. So that means I want 3 such columns. So if I press enter, VS Code automatically creates a div consisting of 3 divs. And this is the first column, which I'm not going to contain anything inside that. And there's the second one, then there is a third one. So I'm going to expand the second one and paste everything that I copied earlier. In order to format this code, you can use Alt-Shift-F, and that actually nicely format your HTML. Now that the code is ready, if I go back and have a look at that, you can see that the column number 1 here is 4 grids, column number 2 is 4 grids, column number 3 is 4 grids. And that's how the entire application has been created now. But if I'm going to select a different device, you will see that automatically it changes its size. For example, if I select this device toolbar and say that I wanted this on a phone, like say iPhone 6, 7 or 8, you can see this is how it's going to look like, because this is now an extra small device, and on extra small device a column automatically becomes 12 grids. So which means this is as good as say call XS12 as well as call SM12. So if you don't mention that, it's going to be like this. And because it is a 12 grid here, this is a dummy column and it doesn't contain anything. You can think of this as a div with a 0 pixel height, which is exactly here on the top, and on the bottom there's a second one. And this is again another 12. So this is what makes it as responsive. If I tilt this, you can see that there is a gap, probably you can see, and that gap is because of the padding within this particular column. But if I select a different device, like for example iPad, you should now see that this is a 4, another 4, another 4. Of course, if I tilt it, you should still see 4 plus 4 plus 4. In any case, let's switch back to iPhone. So we want to target 2 devices here, a mobile phone and the desktop screens.